All right, everybody. Welcome back to Veterans Beyond the Wire podcast. I am your host, Tim Keller. Along with me is Mr. Matt Disher. And we have a very fun guest, a very interesting guest this week. Micheal Gregory. He is a former United States Marine Corps officer who has found his way to the Pacific island destination of Bali. He now lives in Bali. You've been there for how long now, Micheal?
Coming up on 4 years.
Oh, it must be rough every day, just the sun and living close to the beach. And I don't know how you do it, but yeah, we kind of wanted to talk to you. You reached out to us. You sent us an email. We have said on a couple of podcasts that if you are a veteran or work with veterans and have a interesting story, we'd love to hear it and love to talk to you. So you reached out to us. We sat down, kind of chatted a bit, and decided, hey, let's get this guy on. He seems like he's going to be a great conversation. But your story is a little bit different than others because most people, they joined the armed forces, they do their 4 years, 6 years, 20 years, whatever it is, and then they end up going home, or they find. I know I have plenty of friends that we were stationed in Camp Pendleton, fell in love with California, and then decided to make California their home. But not too many people decide, hey, we're going to make home somewhere outside of the United States. So I think you have an interesting story, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. But first off, you and I just chatted a little bit. You're a Villanova alum, big Villanova fan over here, so love that.
Yep.
Wildcats. But let's talk about that. How'd you end up from Villanova into the United States Marine Corps?
When I was in high school, I planned on enlisting. And my dad basically talked me out of it, or talked me into, hey, why don't you apply for this officer thing that they have? That way you can get an education. Because that was always his main priority for all of us kids, was to try to make sure that we get an education. And I said, sure, there's no way that I'm gonna get this. I saw the numbers for how many people apply, how many people get it. I said, yeah, whatever. I'll go through the process and do it, and I'll be at boot camp, 2 months after graduation or something like that. And I got lucky. And, once you get accepted for something like that, you don't really turn it down. The Marine Corps basically offered to pay for my whole tuition, which is amazing, especially at a school like Villanova. Like, Villanova is a ridiculous amount of money per semester, let alone all 4 years put together. So I had no choice, and I'm happy for it. It's great. So, I graduated high school, then they sent me straight to college. And then in between the years of school, we would go do various things with the military. So like the first year was a nice little month long. Here's what the Navy's like. Here's what the Marine Corps is like a field trip, basically. And then they gradually get harder and harder. And then after junior year, I went to OCS. And then got to come back and finish school, and then head right to the basic school in Quantico after I graduated. Yeah.
Awesome. That, that has to be some fun summers. You at least get to come back with stories. Everybody else is like, oh man, I went home and got bombed with my friends from high school. And you're like, oh, I was hanging out with Navy guys and Marine Corps dudes. Like, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it was super cool because we went to visit Buds after my freshman year, and I think that was before we got Osama bin Laden, but it was like right around that time when Navy SEALs were really starting to get super cool. So we were all bragging about that, like we were Navy SEALs ourselves.
I don't know about you guys, but I always thought that the Navy SEAls were super cool the whole time.
I was going to say, yeah, let's not fool ourselves. They've been super cool since the jump.
I've watched all the movies. I saw Charlie Sheen in Navy SEALs.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, the SEALs have always been where it's at, actually. So, congrats to them. But yeah, so you do the college thing. You end up in OCS. After OCS, you end up over in the Pacific Theater for your 4 or 5 years. How long were you in?
Yeah, I was in almost 5 years. So it was a 4-year contract, but because I was overseas, timing got messed up. So they got me on a technicality for an extra 9 months or something like that, which was okay with me because it qualified me for some other stuff, and I was having a good time out there anyway. Yeah, after school, the basic school is 6 months, so it's every officer goes to that school in Quantico, and then we get selected for our MOSs, and then go to that school. So for me, Intel school was in Virginia Beach at Dam Neck in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and that was a few months, and then right to Japan. So I managed to sneak one more Christmas in, and then I was off, and I was officially stationed there for like 3.5 years on Marine Corps Air Base Iwakuni is what it was called then. I think it's a joint base now. They moved the Carrier Strike Group up there from Atsugi, I believe, a year or so after I left. The base tripled in size. I think they were bringing twice as many sailors as were Marines there already, and it had been a Marine Air Base since World War II. So that was kind of significant, and also posed a lot of extra work for all of us that were there, because I was helping with like base security and like some anti-terrorism stuff while I was there. So naturally, having 2,000 foreign contractors on your base doesn't make things easier.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you've gotten out and you're now in Bali. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so this was like a series of fortuitous events for me, I guess, because like most in the military, I didn't really, or in my experience at least, I didn't really think about what I was going to do afterwards. I kind of always assumed, okay, here's my skill set. Here's what my peers are doing. You know, they're either going back to school or getting a job doing essentially the same thing they were doing in the military, but for twice as much money. And they get to get fat and lazy, which, I weighed those options out. But with my skill set, it was probably a job in DC doing something, who knows what. And it seemed all right to me, but I just really wasn't sure. I kind of always assumed I would end up there. But while I was still stationed in Japan, I was traveling a lot. So we didn't do my job. I didn't do typical deployments. It would just be small debts for 2 months at the most, usually more like 4 to 6 weeks. And one of those debts, actually, it was a school. I got sent to WTI in Yuma for 2 months, I think it was. And while I was there, my wife, who was in Japan with me, she went to Bali for a yoga teacher training certification course. And while she was here, she befriended a bunch of people and basically, made friends with the right people and got a job offer to teach here for a little while. So it seemed like a great idea for me, when I was getting out, to take a couple of months, relax, realign, reassess, figure out what I want to do with my life, where I want to go. And that 6 weeks just turned into, or 6 months turned into 4.5 years now. So I guess this is where I belong for now.
All right. Well, you did say on our previous conversation that with her having that job there, you not necessarily going there with any sort of job leads, your original plan was, hey, I'm going to hang out on the beach, drink mimosas, and read books, which, Matt and I both agreed that
sounds terrible. I wouldn't want any part of it.
Yeah, and part of my plan was to become a pro surfer in the first 3 months, and then go on tour. Having never surfed
never done it before, but they make it look so easy. I could figure this out.
Right?
It's the same thing with golf. You watch a Tiger Woods or somebody on the TV, and you're like, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, I've seen 10 Cup. I can. I'm good.
I can do that. And then
exactly.
It's nothing like that.
So
no, not even
you're on the other side of the world. It's 9 a.m. here Eastern time. It's 9 p.m. there. Correct.
Yeah,
other side of the world. Tell me what it's like. You're in Bali. In my travels in the military, in my travels not in the military, when I go to other countries, a lot of other places are mono-ethnic. So we say they are one ethnicity or mostly one ethnicity. America's a melting pot. Do you stick out like a sore thumb when you're walking up and down the streets in Bali?
Most places, yeah. It's nice. There's like a little expat bubble here that we kind of live in that area. So there's a lot of, it's like a melting pot itself. But pretty much if you drive 20 minutes in any direction, they look at you like, what are you doing here? This island's gotten pretty good, but Indonesia's like 1,000+ islands. So as soon as you go anywhere else, forget it. You're a celebrity, especially if you have blonde hair. like they love blonde people here. You know, you're guaranteed celebrity status. They'll give you a whole tour of the village. They'll take pictures with you. You'll find yourself on an ad for cigarettes 3 months later on a billboard and not even know they took your picture for that. Like, no kidding.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So they're welcoming. You feel welcome there.
Yes. Yeah, cool. For sure. Especially now with the quarantine and the pandemic, the tourism industry is just wrecked. So any of us that are left, we have a nice relationship with the locals where, you know, we're helping them, they're helping us get through this whole thing. So it's nice. We've developed a nice tight community.
Well, I mean, you know, speaking of tourism, Tim and I would love to come visit at some point in time. You just say the word, we'll figure out the flights and everything like that. And we'll get down there and we'll do a live podcast from there.
That sounds necessary. Yeah.
On the beach with mimosas.
It's a business trip.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No doubt. You guys let me know. I'll get you here. No problem.
I'm gonna have to get my my guy that does the taxes and make sure I can write this off. But
right.
But Micheal, so you said, hey, the first couple days, you know, I want to just sit on the beach, read some books, just enjoy some time off. And I have to agree with you. You said like 6-7 days in, you went, oh, I thought this was going to be easy. I'm going nuts here. I need to find something to do. So what was it that you started doing?
Yeah, exactly like you said. I was just starting to get stir crazy. I don't know. I think we're all a little bit more type A in the Marine Corps and in the military in general than we realize. So especially being here with a ton of floaters, that people that don't even recognize the country that they came from, they're just kind of like, I'm a citizen of the world type. I'm like super type A, you know? So yeah, just probably a weekend, I was already scheduling my surf times. I was scheduling my naps, you know, this is when I'm going to start drinking, like all that stuff. And then it kind of just cascaded from there, where I knew I needed to start doing something. And I had always really been into training, you know, since even before the Marine Corps. When I was in high school, I played a ton of sports, and it was just something that I always did, to the point where when I would do counseling sessions with my Marines, that always ended up being the majority of the conversation. And I was like writing programs for them just because I felt like it. So I said, all right, well, if that was my favorite part of, you know, what I would try to sneak away and do while I was in the Marine Corps as much as possible and talk about it, why don't I see if anybody I know is interested in letting me try to write them a program and coach them through some stuff. And luckily I had a couple of friends, a couple of family members that wanted me to do that. So I did, and things just kind of snowballed from there, to the point where I had more clients than I knew what to do with. You know, turn this Composure Fitness thing into a proper company, with, you know, proper online offerings and everything like that. And lost my train of thought. So yeah, so I'm like, I'm training people now. I'm in the fitness industry, which is not anything that I trained to do in the Marine Corps, but a lot of the intangible stuff that I kind of picked up from the Marine Corps really translated well, like how to communicate or talk to somebody who's trying to do something difficult, how to plan, you know, those types of things. Just take sports science and apply it in a very 5-paragraph order fashion, and you got yourself a pretty good program. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I also write a lot for wearethemighty.com, which is a great kind of military veteran based website. I do the majority of their fitness writing there. And then obviously my own stuff, but it's kind of nice being on the other side of the world, where it's a perfect 12-hour difference, because I can still work with a lot of people in the States, and the timing works quite well. And having worked in Japan and having to talk to Marine units that are back in the States, I really figured out how's best to communicate with people that are on the other side of the world and how to get a nice flow going. So I kind of just had all the elements in place and started putting them together in a way that made the most sense. It was nice for me because I had the time and I had the space to figure that out and let it grow. But I don't know. I kind of, sometimes I think like we're meant to end up where we're at. So I think that I probably would have ended up doing this no matter what, because I get so much value out of it.
So people on the other side of the world can reach out to you and get in touch with you and get in touch with your business. Is that correct?
Yeah, very easily. It's okay. especially because what I'm doing is outside of business hours typically for most people. You're either training early in the morning or later at night. So because I wake up early, even though I sometimes didn't like that military aspect of my personality. I've really embraced it lately. So if I'm up at 5, people are just getting out of work on the East Coast, let alone the rest of the time zones. Super easy.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've thrown it here on the ticker on the bottom of the screen if you're watching live. Composurefitness.com. That is your site, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So yeah, you talked about some of the writing. I saw this one article. You shared a bunch of them with us, but this one definitely kind of struck me. It's the how my transition impacted my health. Our podcast is aimed at military members transitioning out of the military. And so I think this one in particular kind of speaks to our audience, at least. I know personally, the day I got my DD-214 in my hand, as I'm walking out of that office, like, I got it. I'm never running again in my life. Unless somebody's shooting at me. Even then, I might be like,
I'm going to walk at a fast pace.
I'm just going to walk and maybe go in a zigzag. See what happens. But I told myself, I'm not running anymore. And God, I wish I had. I wish I would have stuck with it a little bit more. I'd say for the first year and a half, I know personally, I just kind of, it's like, I'm going to enjoy life. I'm going to drink. I'm going to eat the things I want to eat. I'm going to do what I want to do and when I want to do it. I'm going to wear my hair when I still had it in whatever fashion I want to wear it. There are certain things that you can do whatever you want with your hair. You can put earrings in your face. You can do whatever you want, get tattoos. But I think, I think that fitness is something that is such a huge part of our lives in the armed forces. And I think it should maintain that status once out. So let's talk a little bit about how your transition impacted your health. I mean, you appear to be a very healthy guy. So how did your health kind of drop off once you left the military?
For sure. Like I mentioned, that was something that I was super into when I was in the Marine Corps was always training. But I did a very similar thing where I was like, I'm just gonna not do anything. I'm gonna sleep in. I'm gonna eat whatever I want. I'm gonna drink on a Tuesday morning because I could never do that before, and just see where it takes me. And it only takes a couple of binges before you realize that you're not 18 anymore, or 21 or whatever. and your body starts to really take a hit, and you start to notice that even 1 or 2 beers, you start to feel the next day. I know I do now, for sure, much more than I did when I was a kid. I'd be able to PT, the next day and act like it was nothing, and look at other people like they were soft, if they couldn't party and then run the next morning. So you go through all of that. And what I found, which was even more unpredictable for me when I got out, was that how much I was going to miss the brotherhood and camaraderie around the military. Because I worked a pretty solitary job, I didn't have a big unit. I was traveling with small groups of people, and I didn't have that many peers as the officer around. You only have a handful to pick from, and you don't really get a choice. That guy's got to be your friend on the weekend if that's all that there is. But even still, living here, I'm sure, made it a little bit more difficult. I don't know, maybe not. But the fact that a lot of people weren't even American, let alone veterans, let alone people who I would consider peers. So I found myself kind of alone. Alone and unafraid is the joke. But when you first get out, you think that you have your DD-214 is like the keys to the kingdom. You can do whatever you want. And then that idea of being able to do whatever you want turns into this information overload, decision paralysis type thing where, okay, I literally can do whatever I want. I don't know what to do. I know I couldn't drink before, so why don't I just start there? And I think I was lucky. I pulled myself out of it before my body took a huge toll. And I wasn't an alcoholic or anything like that. It was just hey, it's time to have fun. I missed pretty much, because I was on the military's dollar from the time I graduated high school. I missed, the majority of my early 20s, my late teen years as well, for whatever that was supposed to be, that exploration period. Because I'm sure you guys have a million stories of young Marines who are thinking the same thing. Hey, I just turned 21. I'm going for it. And when you're in the Marine Corps, no, you have a responsibility, you have duties, you have things that you need to do, places that you need to be, people that are looking to you to be responsible. So that's just really not an option. So when all of a sudden that is an option, or you don't have anyone reliant on you, it feels good at first. You feel like you have that golden ticket, but it's got a dark side. Is how I like to think about it. And, that's one of the reasons that I reached out to you guys in the first place, because I really appreciate anybody who's trying to make the veteran network much tighter, especially for younger guys who are getting out, who are still in their 20s or even early 30s, that I can't speak for everyone's experience, but I know that there's a certain period where you want nothing to do. You almost don't want to associate with the Marine Corps, especially if, depending on how your service was, you want to start something new. You want to put on a new uniform, so to speak, and be a different person. But being able to reach back to that network and really know that there are people who have had similar experiences as you, who have been held to the same standard as you, and things like that, is super, super, super helpful, and a requirement. I really undervalued the aspect of teamwork that we have in the Marine Corps. And I thought that I could do it all myself when I first got out. And it took me probably a couple of years to realize that that's not actually the case. And that's not the way that life's supposed to work anyway. Anyone that sells you that story, that they're the Lone Ranger and they did it themselves, is leaving a lot out of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I equate this to the 18-year-old leaving their parents' house, for example. It's this fight for independence for a lot of people. And, the vast majority of people do 4 years, 8 years in the military, and then they get out. Smaller percentage does the whole career, 20 plus. But you're right, Michael. You're absolutely right. And that is that a lot of these folks are in their early 20s when they come out of the military. The first thing they ever did when they left home was to go into the military. I know for me, that was it. My wife and I talk about this all the time. I never had a college experience. I went to college after the Marine Corps, but I didn't live on campus. I didn't do the college thing. And frankly, I didn't have those types of relationships. I didn't have an opportunity to party or have a good time while I was in that age group, because we were training. We were at 29 Palms all the time, blowing things up, or in Japan or Iwakuni, doing range ops and wherever we were deployed. And so, for me, when I got out, similar thing, we were joking around about it before. I was like, I'm not going to go run ever again. Haha. What the Marine Corps did for me, though, was it gave me this, in what the military, I think, does for most people, is it gives you this exceptional amount of structure. You can house that structure however you want it. You can execute that structure however you want to. But if you don't accept it and absorb it while you're in, you're going to get out and sometimes fall on your face. And that's really it. I talk to employers a lot about the military disciplines. And I've been challenged with this before, that people say, hey, why would I hire somebody from the military? They're used to following orders. And I'm like, you're right. Except they're also used to giving orders. They're also used to coming up with their own plan of action, depending on what their rank structure was, if they were an NCO or JMO or beyond. In many cases, those people are not waiting for orders. They have the structure to kind of discipline themselves. They have the structure to get into life themselves. But I think it's completely applicable to the whole concept of this podcast. And that is, what do you do when you get out of the military? And a lot of people come out and they simply forget all of the structure they've learned. They forget all of those seeds that have been planted inside of them. And they say what Tim and I say: I'm never going to run again, when we absolutely should be running. And here I am. I find myself just a few years beyond 23 years old, and I'm trying to get back into shape, some semblance of shape of what I was when I was a young buck.
Yeah, right before the Rona, I had started back at the gym. I was there for about 8 months. I was really starting to like the progress I was seeing. And then this daggone pandemic hit. So everything kind of closed down. And, Michael, I'll say going through some of your articles, you definitely got me interested again. There's some things on here that I've been reading. You got stuff about the planks, the planks versus the crunches in the new PFT, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The Army's fitness testing. I didn't even know they had that. They have to roll up, bring their knees to their chest.
Leg tucks, yeah.
The leg tucks. There you go. Those sort of things. But yeah, you brought something up earlier. You said it's kind of like the dark side when you get out. I think you're right. You said, I have so many things I want to do, and there was really no one to tell you can't. That's what it is. There's so many options. Literally, it's a smorgasbord of opportunities and options and things you can possibly do, and there's no one there to give you answers now. And you're kind of just, it's the first time, Matt said, it's the first time most young people leave their home is joining the armed forces. And then they finally get out. And now it's the first time in their entire lives, there's not mom or dad, or there's not their platoon sergeant, there's not their captain, there's not their whoever they reported to in the military to tell them, hey, this is the direction we're going to go today. It sounds like for a while you got out and you were going to say, hey, I'm going to just go wild. I'm going to teach myself to surf. I'm going to do this and that. You're now a fitness coach. For other people getting out that don't have a plan, that don't necessarily feel like, hey, maybe the corporate world's not for me. You know, what made you said you've always been into fitness, but did you ever think you could turn that into something? If somebody else is getting out and let's say they have always just enjoyed working on cars, but they don't want to go work for somebody else, how does somebody just say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my own shop. I'm going to start working on other people's cars and hopefully make some money at this. How did you get into, hey, I'm going to take this fitness thing that I like and let's see if I can't make some money doing this?
Yeah, I think my first piece of advice would be to not do it like I did it and wait until you get out, but actually to embrace that interest if you have it now. With everything being online now, way more than ever, you can start a YouTube channel. If, like, say you like cars, you can start a YouTube channel and just go over car mechanic scenes from movies or something like that, and just start talking about it, building up your interest, figuring out exactly where you'd like to insert yourself into that world. Because I think we're even though small business owners have taken a pretty big hit with the pandemic, I think that we're going to see another spike after the pandemic of people coming back at it, solopreneurs especially, like just doing their own thing. And the biggest piece, like the biggest nugget of gold, is just to kind of just start. Because I know for sure my major apprehensions were always like, well, I don't know how to establish a business. Do I need a lawyer? Like who's gonna, where do I get a license from? Where do I do this? Where do I do that? And the more I started looking into those aspects, for example, the more I realized that nobody knows what they're doing, and 3/4 of the businesses out there are not properly registered anyway. So just start doing it on your own, because you'll start figuring it out as time goes along. And ultimately the product, whatever you're offering, I'm offering services, right? Whatever you're offering is going to be the most important thing. So it doesn't matter if you have all your other ducks in a row, if you have investment rolling in, investment money or whatever, none of that stuff matters if you have a crappy idea. But there's lots of downtime, especially as actually any rank, unless you're in school at the same time as while you're in service, there's a lot of free time. And if you're just playing video games or drinking on the weekends, that's only fun for so long, and it doesn't really take you anywhere afterwards. And it's just as fun. I've been watching a lot of Drunk History lately. It was a show on Comedy Central. Maybe you guys have seen it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But like even if you like drinking, turns out you can turn that into a Comedy Central show if you just have enough tenacity. But the other thing you said, Tim, was about how this is a smorgasbord. You can do anything. Just pick one thing. I think definitely nowadays, I know my parents and my grandparents' generation, they operated under this assumption that you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, you retire, and then you die. Like that standard flow. But nobody's working for companies that are offering. The military is like one of the only ones left that's offering a pension for 20 or 30 years. There are still some, but it's not like it used to be. So you're probably going to change careers a bunch. So if you're really interested in something now, explore it fully, like to the full depth that you can. And then maybe you ride it out until it's done, or maybe you decide that it's time to move on to the next thing. But just the amount of lateral mobility that we have right now with the internet, how easy it is to set up a website, how easy it is to get resources, to get whatever raw materials you need to make something. I have more people in my life than I can count that have an Etsy store or something else that are making some nonsense that I wouldn't think there would be a market for, but they're making good money off of because it's so easy to source stuff.
This is out of the playbook of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We've all read that book or heard of it. That was a game changer for me, and it was talking about, or what it meant to me was the side hustle. It was have your job, have your regular income, go to work, but then find ways to make a little bit of cash on the side. And eventually, those ideas on the side might turn into your living, where you can walk away from working for the man, so to speak. If you drive around in any community where you see the big houses and stuff like that, half of them are people that have worked their way up the ranks of a large corporation or company. The other half of them are entrepreneurs. They're people that started their own business or businesses and then built them up a little bit and sold them, So it's absolutely relevant. Man, I wish I would have had these types of conversations 15 years ago. Because it didn't occur to me until the last, 6 or 8 years. Now that I have a family, I'm like, man, how do we get out of this thing alive? How do we walk away and how do I have a boat one day before I'm retired and tapping into my retirement? I'd like to have some of those things. And it really does. It starts with, Michael, you said it. I mean, it starts with just doing it, just jumping in and getting to work. And it's going to take some work. It takes a lot of work, as a matter of fact. I've started up a couple of things on the side too that were it was generating, in some cases, having business calls and sales calls and trying to get people to buy into what I was doing. It takes work. It's not going to happen by sitting around playing video games, as you mentioned.
For sure. And that's not to hate on video games either, because apparently you can make great money doing that stuff these days too. But you need to commit to that, commit to the game or commit to the tactics or whatever for the game. It's all about that commitment. And I think it's like, in quotes, easy to commit to the military because you sign the contract and then they kind of carry you along through your career, at least for your contract.
Yeah, once you're there, you don't have much of a choice. You're kind of committed.
Exactly. But in these like solo pursuits after you get out, you have to basically recommit to yourself every morning when you wake up, which gets tiring.
Well, yeah, you just kind of said something there. One of your other articles is about, do you need a drill instructor in your own civilian life? I think that we all need to be our own drill instructor at times, our own drill sergeant. Because like you said, if you're in a corporate job, guess what? You could love your job, but there's going to be certain days where you're going to wake up and just think, I don't want to go to the office today. I don't want to go in. If you start your own business, maybe you started this thing, it got to a certain point where you felt comfortable leaving your corporate position. But then something like a pandemic happens and everything seems to be on a downturn, and just life is just throwing you bucket after bucket of waste at you. And you're like, I just don't want to do this no more. Being your own drill instructor allows us to, hey, snap out of this. We're better than this. We know what we need to do. It's just time to do something. So that was another article I saw that I really liked. But let's get back to the fitness thing for a little bit, Mike.
Sure.
The Composure Fitness, that is your page. That is what you do. You want to talk a little bit about some of the programs you do. I see that you offer like group classes and things like that. Exactly what is everything that you do in the fitness space for individuals? And like you said, your 12 hours difference, it works out very well for people over here, especially on the East Coast. How can people get in touch with you, and what can you do for them?
Yeah, so probably in the last 4 years, I've probably done a little bit of everything, trying to figure out exactly where I belong, because there's countless things you could do in the fitness industry as well, countless different avenues you could decide to go down. My main avenue is, I like to say that I coach strength. So starting with basic barbell movements is where I begin. But being in Asia for so long, I've gotten quite into meditation myself, and have learned from some cool teachers and picked up some cool methods. And what I've realized over time is that the applications, the lessons that you can learn from heavy barbell movements, for instance, but most different types of exercise as well, but heavy barbell movements specifically, the lessons that you can learn about, how to overcome adversity, how to stay focused on a singular task, how to keep your concentration where it needs to be, how to have some empathy for yourself if you have a bad day versus a really good day. They're all very similar lessons that are taught in meditation in a very formalized manner. So where I kind of
agree.
Nice. Yeah. So where I've kind of planted my flag is right in the middle of those two, to show people the overlap between what exercise is for most people and what it could be. Basically, there's another piece that I wrote recently that was essentially about how PT in the Marine Corps, for the most part, not entirely, and then also when I was in high school and stuff like that, taught me basically to use it as a form of punishment for myself, which, especially for people getting out of the military, I know that was my major aversion to getting back into shape or to making that part of my life again, because I had negative connotations in it, being forced to wake up early, going on runs that I didn't want to do, doing nonsense workouts that I didn't think were taking a freaking log through the O course. Like, why are we doing this, dude? It's fun, and it's a fun memory to look back on, but it also implanted something in my mind that the exact opposite is possible when you work out as well, where you can not use it as a form of punishment, but use it as a form of essentially meditation to reinforce those skills that you want in your life. Because like you guys said, there are going to be days you don't want to wake up and do what you have to do. But if you view your training as literally training for that opportunity, not just to get bigger muscles or to run a faster 3-mile time or something like that, you can teach yourself a little bit every day and be your own drill instructor from that aspect. So that's really my main niche right now, and what I focus on. So the fitness is really just a proxy. The workouts are like a way to instill these other values into you, which I thought I taught McMap for a little while, the Marine Corps martial arts, while I was in. And one of the great things that they had, which not all instructors did, but I tried to when I was teaching classes, was how to tie in at the end. Here's this like little moral lesson or little ethical tidbit for you to take home with you, so that it's not just about trying to punch each other in the face, but instead, what that could actually mean, or how you can apply that further. So I decided to basically go that route and try to apply that to training as a whole for everybody.
I know when I got out, I was personally dealing with how to deal with another one of your articles, how to deal with civilian stress versus military stress. I found that civilian stress it's just a different breed of stress. And for years I was in the military, and I became adjusted to that sort of stress. Loud noises, early wake ups, forced physical training, things like that, being away for months at a time. Civilian stress is different. So on my own, I started trying to learn and teach myself a little bit of meditation and things like that. But then you nailed it right on the head, and I completely agree with you. Once I got into the gym and I started doing some lifting, it's that same thought. You're working on, you're focusing on form, you're focusing on breathing, you're focusing on being present in that moment to get the most gains out of the things you're attempting to do. And I found that it was like I was doing two things at once. I was meditating. I was clearing my mind of everything else in the world. I wasn't focusing on any of the other stresses, and I was purely focusing on that moment. So yeah, I found that at least for me, that lifting is a huge stress reliever, and it sounds like your program would work well for me. It seems like
Yeah.
I have that same sort of mindset.
I think we've talked about this on the topic. The stress of getting out, the stress of transition. That one of the things missing from a lot of the transition programs is what is the environment of getting out of the military? What's that look like? What's that feel like? What's the emotional toll? And I think that I've always found the same. I feel better. And there was a commercial that played. What was the television channel in the Marine Corps? Or the military television channel?
The news network.
Yeah, I forget what it was. It didn't have, if you recall, it didn't have actual commercials. It had commercials made by the DoD, but there was this one where this couple was running and they just kept running. It looked all dramatic, like it was going to be a thriller of some sort, like a trailer to a movie. And it said, stress, run it out. And these people ended up running, 6 miles to get rid of their stress. But in reality, nobody tells us what it's like to get out of the military. And you have no guidance there unless you can listen to conversations like this and take tips. But I think it's ultra valuable because, and I've mentioned this before, I found myself coming out of the military and trying to go to college and having some certain frustrations around finances, for example, and sitting in my car banging on the steering wheel. And I just wasn't prepared. I'm like, we've done all this amazing things. I've stayed awake for 3 days at a time, freezing cold and soaking wet in the ocean. I've done things that are humanly impossible for most men. And here I am getting mad because I can't pay the bill, my parking pass bill at college. Like, it's silly stuff, but nobody prepared me for that. Nobody ever told me, like, hey, here's how you get through that. Here's how you're talking about meditation and working out. I wasn't doing any of that. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't channeling my my energy toward the things that I needed to channel it toward.
Matt, to answer your question, AFN, American Forces.
AFN.
Yeah, American Forces Network was what it was. And yes, you did say it was. I'll call it mild propaganda.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Propaganda.
mild propaganda.
It was. We'll have to find some of those commercials and put them up here one day.
That would make a good podcast. You
just really would
to those guys.
For anyone that wasn't in the service and overseas, especially is where you really saw this. The Armed Forces Network. You could, like, your big events, like they would televise like the Super Bowl or World Series, things like that. But like major news, they would hit on those sort of things, just kind of keep you up to date with what's going on back home. I'm sure it's completely different nowadays, especially with the internet being what it is. Right. It has to be just a million times easier to understand what's actually still going on back home than it was back then. But so when this thing, everybody back home is watching, the Super Bowl, it goes to commercial and you have Budweiser, Doritos.
Yeah, that's the worst part.
Yep. And then instead it goes to, hey, go to the PX and buy your new uniforms. Make sure you get your boots while you're there. Yep. Hey, there's some crappy movie that's coming out in the movie theater on base here.
Don't forget to PT this weekend.
Here's whether this week's going to be hot, stay hydrated. And you're like, right. So it's it's a different world. I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure it's so much different now. Michael, I just kind of want to give you the floor here for a couple minutes. For people for people getting out, for people that have been out, just kind of talk about what fitness does for you. I think fitness is a great thing. But talk about what fitness does for you, some of the benefits that you take away from fitness. I talked about how if you're focused on the exercises you're doing in that moment, it's almost like you're meditating. But I think staying healthy after your service is a major thing. We spent all that time being as healthy as possible, getting out and not exercising no more. It's truly a waste. So talk about some of the fitness, the upsides for you, and we'll start to wrap this thing up.
Sure. What I'd like to start off is like touch back on the stress that you guys mentioned, like the difference between military stress, which is this like super dramatic, acute thing. Like, you know, if someone's yelling at you, it's this spike. You feel the adrenaline spike, your palms get sweaty, like, and then we're taught how to react to that. Versus when you get out, on average, the stress isn't that high of a spike. It's this chronic thing that's kind of just underlying. It's like an undercurrent of everything. Mostly it's the stress of the unknown, of what's going to happen next, of not knowing what to do, you know, those types of things that really just kind of seep in there. You think you're doing all the right things, and then all of a sudden something goes wildly wrong. And it's that level of like chronic underlying stress that I think, for me especially, and for everybody that I kind of work with, I've noticed the same thing, that's what's getting to them, and that's what exercise can help with the most. Where I view it as, I like to call it simulated life-threatening danger. Like when you go into the gym, you're simulating life-threatening danger. You're trying to elicit the same response from your body as would happen if you were getting chased by a tiger, or if mortar rounds are incoming. The same things happening in your body. So if you think about it like that, as if you always have this very low current of stress going on, I'll say negative stress, because there are positive stressors, right? Which I'll get to. But if you have this like chronic level of a low level of stress going on throughout your life, and then you can go to the gym and get a spike in that stress, an acute high spike in that stress, that's where the beneficial aspects to stress can come from. But also it's my belief, and there's some nice studies that kind of show this out a little bit more clearly, that it helps that chronic level of stress go down as well, then, because you did something, you reacted to that stress. When it's chronic all the time and you're not reacting, and you're just kind of, I guess this is what it's like now, you know, you turn 30 and you don't fall asleep until 2 a.m. You're just staring at the ceiling all night. It's like people accept that as the norm, but that's not the case. You can use this spike in your day where you elevate everything, all of your hormones. This is your opportunity to, you know, let out any aggression that you haven't been able to. You know, in the Marine Corps, it's fine to tell somebody that you're going to chest kick them, but you can't do that. You can't do that in an office. Are you kidding me? Like you can't even come close to that.
Since when?
So I like to, whenever I give talks or tell people what life used to be like, I just tell them, I used to be able to, if I had a conflict with a coworker, you know, a fellow Marine, I would be able to say, well, we can just go outside and fight about it, or let's go to McMap tomorrow morning or something. I can't do that anymore because like there's not a lot of people who would be willing to fight me here, especially, like I'm not around so many peers, but B, obviously that for other reasons, nobody wants to see violence in their life.
So upon that.
Yeah. Right. Especially if it's the HR person that you're telling that to. Yeah. So back to the benefits, you know, the benefits that you see all these Instagram influencers and social media, you know, TikTok fitness influencers and stuff talking about is like, get abs, get 20-inch arms, you know, all this stuff. You'll get more chicks, you'll get more money, you'll get like whatever the claims are. That stuff, once you like really find a nice groove for what gives you energy and helps you deal with that stress response, like I said, that stuff is so unimportant. Because you realize that the mental clarity that you can achieve, and it doesn't have to be lifting. If you're a runner, I have a friend who runs marathons all the time. He gets the same effect from running because he found what works best for his body. Mm-hmm. It can be whatever works best for your body, but kind of how I was talking about choosing something and trying to go deep in it for whatever you decide to do after the Marine Corps, or after the military, I should say. Choose an exercise that you're willing to go deep on so that you can become good at it and get that mental benefit as well. Because, you know, we've all been to a class or, you know, done a PT session where your heart's just not in it, you know, so to speak. And you don't get the same benefit out of that because you wish you were somewhere else the entire time. But find something that you enjoy doing, and find something that is meeting you where you're at. Holding yourself to the standard that you were at when you were 19 and ran a 300 PFT is a huge mistake.
I was gonna bring that up. So that's a good one. 2 years ago, I was in a 5K. over 1,000 run. I placed in the top 100. I should have been
Congrats.
excited for myself.
Yeah.
But I looked at the winning time. There wasn't any sort of professional runners in this, and I looked at the winning time, and my wife goes, "You were in the top 100. You're like 96 or something. Like you should be proud of yourself." I'm like, there was a time in my life where I smoked that guy by 2.5 minutes. I'm like, I should have won this. She goes, "You're closing in on 40 years old, stupid. Like, don't do that to yourself." And my head just goes, nope. I'm coming back next year and I'm taking this whole thing down. She goes, "No, you're not. Stop it." You're like,
and it's not impossible. I run the DAV 5K every year here in Cincinnati, and every year I get worse. And now I've brought my 9-year-old son into it, and sometimes we need to stop and take a walk. And then we finish this thing in 30 minutes, and I'm like, literally, I think my best PFT time was somewhere around 17, 18, at my peak. But then I go home and flog myself, and because I'm not what I was. But this was 20 years ago.
Yeah. So Mike, that's a great point to find new standards to hold yourself to, because you're not, unless you're fresh out, unless you're 23, 24, and you really haven't been off of, training on a daily basis for that long. If you've taken a few years off, or let's just say, hey, maybe I got in the gym and I lifted a bunch, but I haven't been doing anything for cardio. I haven't ran in years. And all of a sudden you're going to go jump into a 5K. You're just going to go on a run. You're not going to be able to run like you used to. So just don't get upset.
For sure. And that's not to say that you shouldn't do hard things or things that are difficult for you, because that's obviously an opportunity. But like I was saying, that's a perfect opportunity to have some empathy for yourself and just, recognize what you've already done and be okay with not being able to do that. Because right now, wherever you're at, you're doing a ton of shit that you never did while you were in the Marine Corps, even thought was possible. So, hey, there's give and take in everything.
Right.
Just one last time, I wanted to highlight your website, composurefitness.com. It top of the page, it says win the day every day. It goes into a little bit about some of your key principles: humility, leadership, relationship, strength, and locus of control. But then, it talks a little bit about you. You have the Fitness Academy 6-month program. I would suggest anybody listening that has any sort of inclination that they want to start a training sort of program, check this out. This might be for you. Michael, appreciate you so very much for coming on, reaching out to us. If you were like Michael, you have an interesting story, and you want to share it with us, you can reach out to us. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. You can email us at veteransbtw@gmail.com. One last time, you can find Michael on Facebook. You can find him on Twitter. You want to let the people know where they can find you there?
Yeah. Twitter is @ComposureFit. Instagram's @ComposureFitness. And my email is just michael@composurefitness.com. So, anybody that just wants to reach out and have a chat as well, feel free to shoot me a message. I'm always on board to hear, especially from veterans, what's going on in their lives and see how I can lend a helping hand.
And I think in the meantime, Tim and I are going to look at plane tickets and see what it's going to cost us to get down there to Bali and actually sit down and have a real podcast. Might not happen this year or next year, but we'll start doing that research.
Yeah. That sounds awesome.
Sounds great.
I think the big takeaway from today's episode, at least for me, is it seems like Michael got out. He didn't have much of a plan. I know I didn't. I got out and I was like, hey, I got a couple bucks in my bank that I saved. I'll figure it out. I think Michael found a path and he followed his own path. And for some of us, that is exactly what we need to do. So if you get out and you don't know what you want to do, what you should do, if you don't have a plan, if you're like Michael and you have something that you really, really enjoy doing, go down that path, fully investigate it, go as deep as you possibly can, run it till it runs dry. And at that point you can make changes differently. And maybe you just have a little bit of luck and it turns into something awesome. So we here at Veterans Beyond the Wire are live on Facebook, YouTube, and on Periscope through Twitter. You can watch us live there when we go live. You can watch the episodes after we are live. You can follow us on all the major podcast platforms. If you like what you hear, give us a rating review. That helps us get to the eyes and ears of so many more people. We thank you so much for tuning in. Michael, thank you for being an awesome guest. Appreciate you very much. Enjoy Bali for as long as you're there. And until next time, we are Veterans Beyond the Wire. We'll see you next time.